The economic crisis has no clear or singular cause to which blame can be assigned. It began with the rise in unsustainable housing boom, was perpetuated by irresponsible lending habits, was incubated by the development and proliferation of flawed financial practices, most notably the damning mix of collateralized debt obligations and credit default swaps, and was ultimately ensured by the failure of market and government oversight mechanisms to come to grips with economic reality. The steps taken by the Obama administration recognize this complexity. Its efforts have not been without controversy or error. However, each initiative has been motivated by the desire to soften the blow of this downturn on real people and to ensure the future vibrancy of our market system. The stimulus package passed into law in February was of an unprecedented magnitude, a clear and concerted effort to restore the decline in aggregate demand and in real economic activity implicit in a recession. The recently announced housing plan focuses on ensuring foreclosure prevention necessary to the recovery of an economic sector whose decline perpetuated the crisis. Steps to address the shortfall of confidence and liquidity in the financial system have included continued application of the Troubled Assets Relief Program, significant measures undertaken by the Federal Reserve, and now a recently introduced private-public partnership program to provide a market-based solution to the countless sour assets currently preventing lending institutions from having the confidence to extend credit and promote growth. Furthermore, strong reform of our regulatory structure has been proposed to secure our prosperity even after recovery has already taken hold. These are the steps necessary for economic recovery. They are not perfect, but an imperfect situation renders any push for perfection futile. These measures will not and should not be carried out with strong oversight and healthy debate. But one must make a concerted effort to avoid the oversimplifications and dogmatic nomenclature that many have used in an attempt to deride the current approach. Let us have a productive and pragmatic discussion, disagreeing on practice, but accepting a principle of mutual acknowledgement that the complexity of our economic circumstances prevents soundbite solutions.
The failure to include any meaningful tax cuts for neither individuals nor small businesses, the true stimulators of job growth, while throwing hundreds of billions of dollars at state governments and programs, has investors worried. President Obama has promised to raise taxes on the only bracket of this economy that will be responsible for its revival, the top 5%. Taxes must again be cut on those who provide jobs and revenue streams that allow our free market to exist. To discourage individual success by taxing it away is to punish principles on which this nation was founded. Another undeniable fact is that the stock market has dropped 1,500 points under President Obama's leadership. Words like catastrophe, crisis, and depression are coming from the mouth of the newly elected president, rather than words of hope and optimism. Instead of talking about America's capabilities and prospects, he talks them down, the exact opposite of our most successful recent precedent in a time of economic crisis, Ronald Reagan, who came vowing to restore that shining city on a hill. Even ex-President Clinton requested Obama to return to his previous optimism, saying he would, quote, just like him to end by saying that he is hopeful and completely convinced that we're going to come through this. In examining the stock market, we must understand its role in the recovery of our economy. Based on the future potential of this country, businesses and individuals invest to profit off of growth and development. To encourage this, we must eliminate the capital gains tax. The capital gains tax is a tax on profits made on the sale of goods, investments, and inventory. During the last major recession during the 80s, we cut the capital gains tax 15% and saw revenue soar by 90%. If it works, try it again, and that's exactly what we must do. The capital gains tax discourages investment, period. To grow the economy, we must eliminate the capital gains tax punishments and incentivize investment to revitalize this economy. Finally, allow me to point out what will not and cannot work. European liberal socialism that utilizes the punishment of taxation for social engineering is the sure way to ensure we're on a more level playing field with countries whose unemployment rate is a standard 10%. This country's success depends on the free enterprise system that facilitated unprecedented levels of growth over the past century and rewards hard work and success, as opposed to restrictive, controlling, and politicized economies. The Depression was overcome with an increase in production brought on by World War II, not spending our way into an oblivion like we're doing now. Only by encouraging private industrial growth will we restore that shining city on the hill.
Rate cuts result in saving, not spending. Spending is what's needed to stimulate the economy. It's needed to rise aggregate demand, which has been depressed due to the economic circumstances. Furthermore, the Congressional Research Service has also written that the capital gains tax is the smallest, has the smallest stimulative effect of any fiscal policy proposal proposed by the United States government. Looking at it more technically, Moody's Economy has released a study of the multiplier effect of putting $1 of spending or investment into the economy and the return you get on that. Increased infrastructure spending has a multiplier of 1.59. That's $1.59 of increased output for every $1 spent on it.
What is the cheapest way to fix the economy? Do things that are free. Now, do you spend money? Is that free? No, you cut taxes. That is the biggest free thing you can do in the economy. Now, he's talked about that the most effective thing to do is to spend, not save, because when people save, there's a problem. Well, prior to 2000, we had one of the worst savings rates in the world, and since then, after the Bush tax cuts, we had revenue soar, we had private investment, we had industries that were doing better than they had ever done in history. You know, in your opening statement, you talked about how the reality of complexity and how the housing crisis was to blame for this. Well, I agree, the housing crisis was to blame. And the other day I was in the College Democrats office and I saw two pictures, the two pictures of the individuals who were blamed for this entire crisis. Barney Frank and Chris Dodd. So college Democrats in this case are enablers by supporting individuals who are at fault for this entire economic crisis. The reason I say that is because Chris Dodd and Barney Frank were the individuals who pushed forth legislation to support Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. The two organizations who got underqualified individuals into houses, who ensured that all of these loans were given AAA ratings so that banks would lend them out. It is the fault of the government that we are in the current economic crisis, and it will not be the government that fixes it. It will be private industry, it will be the individuals who have led to the prosperity and success of this country since we came here. And the only way to do that is to give individuals, to give private industries the ability to control for themselves how they spend their own money.
And to address your point that tax cuts are free, the Bush administration tax cuts increased our deficit and our debt precipitously. And it is for that reason that surpluses in the Clinton years were turned into deficits and debt. This economic crisis has forced us to acknowledge the interconnectivity of the global economy, and it has put very simply forced us to make choices. Choices between sharp and unstable booms or steady and sustainable growth. Choices between risky and over-leveraged financial institutions or transparent and responsible credit markets. Choices between a government which evades its responsibility to prevent and address market failure or one which buttresses the free market through effective and streamlined regulation. These are the choices we must make. A great deal of pain has been inflicted on millions of Americans due to our failure to make these choices, but we need not wait any longer. It is time to decide.
There were three different kinds of proposals that were put forth to regulate the industries that are most at fault for the current credit and banking crisis, and that was to ensure that there were minimum capital levels, that Freddie and Fannie could borrow from the Treasury, that there was a requirement to avoid systematic risks. All three of these things were voted against by Democrats during the Clinton years. The reason we're in the current economic crisis is because the regulatory obligations that we understood, because Adam Smith would be our hero in this case, were ignored during the Clinton years. You know, you talk a little bit about the stimulus that we need, the stimulus that occurred during the Great Depression. During the Great Depression, I'd like to point out 1929 wasn't the worst year. 1933 was when some of these stimuli were put in place. That wasn't the worst year. Now, 2007 wasn't the worst year, and it's not going to be the worst year because we've decided to spend trillions of dollars just like we did before. Now, I've got a little commercial for us right now. You know, state fiscal. Well, first let's talk about the stimulus and some of the things that we're wasting money on. Some of these things that cost a lot. Let's just see some of these things. You know, $87 million for polar icebreaking ship. There's some jobs. $1.4 billion for rural waste disposal programs. Well, at least we can flush the toilet now. $6.2 billion for weatherization assistance program. There's some stimulus for you. $150 million for the Smithsonian. Well, at least we can teach the children about evolution. $34 million to renovate the Department of Commerce headquarters. $500 million for improvement in parks and National Institutes of Health facilities. None of these things are going to improve the state of the economy. None of these things lead to real stimulus. What leads to real stimulus are things that don't cost anything. Cutting taxes. You know, it costs the government money, but that's good. We don't want the government to have money because when they do, they screw up. We want private individuals to have money. We want industries to have money because private individuals create jobs. Like we discussed earlier, the government creates bureaucrats, and that's not how you solve the current economic crisis.